All right, here we are, session 4, looking at how we're going to conduct our planning and record our process through the personal project. Recording the process here, obviously you're doing this all the time in your process journal, but it means a slightly different thing here. A lot of it has to do with time management and things like that. So let's have a look here. But before we go on too far, let's have a quick little recap of what we've covered so far. First, we looked at making sure we had a clear and highly challenging goal connected to a global context and based on personal interests. Then we analyzed highly relevant personal experiences and subject-specific learning. We moved on to intensive and evaluated research on the topic and the product, and we've also created rigorous success criteria. So now it's time, if we haven't already, to start mapping out our time. So when it comes to planning, the IB has two key words for your plan. They want your plan to be detailed and accurate. And if we look at the further clarifications from the guide for the assessment, they want to see that you have short and long-term planning broken down into specific steps, clear connections to your project, and you've included specific dates and deadlines. Now, as a kind of a side note, this is obviously important for assessment. This is the assessment language given to you. But also, it's going to make your project significantly easier. The quicker you can kind of put a detailed plan into place, the more effective you're going to be using your time, the easier the project's going to seem in terms of kind of balancing it with all of your other coursework. And you're also going to be able to have a more productive working relationship with your supervisor, because they're going to know exactly what you're trying to do, by what time, what kind of support you need, and they'll be able to kind of give you those little pushes when you're struggling to meet those deadlines. So it is very important. And it doesn't mean that it can't change. If you do, something comes up and life happens and you can't quite meet all your deadlines, that's fine. You're not going to fail the personal project, but it's going to help your supervisor, myself, and yourself to be aware of when you're falling behind. So one of the tools that I think is the most helpful for creating this plan is called the Gantt chart. And here's a little tiny sample. Yours would be more detailed than this. You can see that I made this just using Google Sheets. You can use Numbers. If you're a Mac person, you can use Excel. Or there's probably lots of different apps that help you make a Gantt chart. So what I've done here is I've sort of taken some of the big key tasks, research, success criteria, and product, and I've tried to break that down into subtasks. So for my research, you can see I've thought about finding sources for the product, finding sources for the topic, completing the OPVLs. I'd probably add some things about taking notes, making sure I have a bibliography, and having all those specific breakdowns. Then along the top, you can see columns with W and a number. That would be like week 1, week 2. You could put specific dates in there. This is kind of a generic one. Or you might just put dates in for the end. So maybe week 1 and week 2, I'm going to find sources for the product, but I might put a really specific date in that week 2 box. So that would be a very helpful way. You can see I've color-coded it to kind of divide up my big tasks. You could make it as beautiful as you want or as simple as you want, but the IB wants to see that you've got those short-term goals, you've got some things that are going to take a little bit longer, and that you're breaking them down into very specific tasks. And again, include dates where you can, as often as you can. Okay, it's okay to change them. We'll talk about that on the next slide. But you want to make sure you have them in the first place. It's going to help you, and it's going to help your supervisor. So once you've got that into place, take some time, make that nice and detailed. You're moving on to recording your development of your planning. So what they want to see is that you can account that you have, from the start to the finish of your project, this is something that doesn't go away. Even though we're talking about it now, you'll be following through on this throughout. You're going to document how well you've met your plan. So that can be done in your journal articles, your process journal entries, where you can kind of mention whether you're on track or off track, what steps you're going to try to do, how is the evidence lining up to prove that you're on time, have you met with your supervisor to help give you a push, etc. And when you do make changes to your dates, maybe a bunch of assessments happen, or maybe something outside of school interrupts your planned time, you want to clearly describe those experiences and justify, how did you change it, why did you need to change it, and explain all of that. Again, it's okay to change a few times. The IB does want to see that you're trying your best, that you made a realistic plan. You didn't kind of just keep pushing it back and back and back until you did it all in like a week. That's not very feasible, but they do understand that life happens and plans often don't work as they're written originally, so it's totally fine to change them. You just want to make sure that you're documenting all of that. So I hope that helps. That's our section on planning. We'll have another session soon. If you have any questions, of course, as always, come and find me, talk to your supervisor, and good luck.